And my sermon's at least 84 minutes, so I want to make sure we get through this. Yeah, it's a long one. Just buckle up, you guys. Hopefully you're comfy. Just if you need a slouch, do what you got to do. But today we're gonna talk about community today as we kind of continue our Off to a Good Start series. But before I kind of jump into that, the reason I picked community is because community is very important. Community is important for your life. We all have a desire inside of us to connect with other people. We have a desire to find a person to what we would probably say live life with or to do life with or whatever it is. We desire that. We want that. We want relationship. We want connection. We want family. We want friends. Those are things that are inside of us deeply. You might be like, no, I'm super grumpy. I don't like people. Well, you're here, so obviously you don't dislike people that much. But we all have that innate desire in us, and that's a good thing. That's the way that God designed us. When he made Adam, he said, it is not good for you to be alone. He created Eve for him. He created other humans for other humans, and he did that on purpose. And I believe now is an imperative time for us in community. And I was reminded of that this week as well, too, because, I mean, you guys know this has been a tough week. This has been a nationally tragic week for us. It is huge. There's been a lot of things. It wasn't even just like one thing. It was like 3-4 different things that were happening this week. And as I was reflecting on that and just, my heart was hurting for the Kirk family and for that poor girl on the subway and the school shootings and like all this stuff. And even remembering 9/11, I was stuck in a hotel room in Chicago, unable to fly for a week because of 9/11 and just reflecting on all that. And just thinking, man, it's so tough. It's so tough for so many of us. And that's why I think community is so important. Because when you're going through tough things, and even if it doesn't affect you like in the first person tense, like, you may not be related to any of those people that had the tragedy or know them personally, it still affects you because you start getting anxious. Like, oh man, what does this mean? What's God doing? And the truth is we don't know what God's doing. And we won't know probably for a while. But I know that one day we'll see it and we'll go, oh, I see, Lord. I see what you were doing. I see how you took this tragedy. And even though it was intended for evil, you found a way to use it for good. And I believe that with everything inside of me. And that's why I think it's so important that we lean on finding the right people in our life to be supportive because, again, we go through times that are tough. We go through sickness. We go through divorces. We go through deaths in the family. Those are all things that are part of life because, unfortunately, the Bible describes us as jars of clay. We are fragile. And so with that, I wanted to continue to just talk about that today as we really dive into the idea of community. And we're going to be in 1 Corinthians chapter 3 today. But before we do, I want to talk really quickly about my wife and I when we moved to Atlanta 16 years ago. Obviously, we don't live there now. We live here now. But 16 years ago, we moved to Atlanta. And it was tough. It was really tough because for my wife, this is the first time she ever moved away from her family. When she went off to college, the campus was like 30 miles away. So with Riverside traffic, that was like 6.5-day drive. But most of the time, it was just a quick 40-minute drive and she was back home. And so this was the first time she moved away from family. For me, it was my technical second time because I moved from Northern California to Southern California to go to college. So I was the pro, apparently, at this. But when we got to Atlanta, we came in on like a Tuesday, and we went to church that following Sunday because a friend of mine was leading worship at one of the churches down there. So I was like, hey, let's go to this church. Let's check it out, see if this is where we want to be. And so that's where we went. And we went that Sunday, and that Sunday they made a big announcement. We're going to do small group signups this Thursday. Please come to this campus and find a group for you. Now, how they did signups is so different. And the reason they do it is because the church is like I think at the time it was only 5,000, but now it's like 8,000 for that campus. Yeah, just a small church. And so they don't do signups like we do because that would be a colossal logistical headache for them. So what they do is they open up this entire, like it's maybe the size of 2 basketball courts. It's like a multi-purpose room. And they take out everything, and then they put open small groups along the sides, and they create this like meat market of Christians. And you just show up, and you can see like giant banners of neighborhoods approximate where they're at. So you can go, oh, I live in this neighborhood. I should go talk to these people. Oh, I live in this neighborhood, and so on and so forth. And so this is what worked for them. And they call it Group League, and it works great for them. You kind of have to. They're such a big church. But there's like 400 plus people in this room. And they're just all kind of talking, and it's like a job fair. And I didn't know what to do. I was like, am I supposed to pitch myself to these groups? Am I supposed to be like, hey, you want me? Like, am I selling myself? Are they selling themselves? Are they going to give me a piece of candy and say, please come to my small group? Like, I don't know. So I'm standing in the back. My wife is a super extrovert, so she's like bouncing up and down. Let's go talk to people. And I'm like, just chill, baby, chill. Like, let's just figure this out. And so we're off to the side, just kind of looking around. There was another couple that we were staying with. They also came as well, too. And they were looking for a group as well. And they're like, we're just going to join whatever group you're in since you're our roommates anyways. And I said, good plan. And as we're standing there, there's a couple more couples that just started kind of standing next to us, all with the same intention. What do we do? With the eyes, you could tell one of them was the introvert and the other one was the extrovert. It's amazing how God does this, because the extrovert's like, come on. And the introvert's like, chill. So it's just like this constant back and forth. And we're just there. And all of a sudden, we're standing there. We just start talking to each other. And we're just like, hey, you guys trying to figure out groups too? We're like, yeah. What do you think? We're like, I don't know. What neighborhood are you in? And it just so happened that all 5 of us, all 5 couples, we all lived within the general area of each other. Like, it was within like 2 miles. It was crazy how that all worked. So we just start talking to each other and just, getting in, oh, how many kids do you have? And just going back and forth. And we're like, oh, we don't have any kids yet. We didn't even know we were pregnant yet. And so we were just like, oh, we're still newly without kids. And so then there's this dude next to me, and I look over at him, big, just massive dude, like super muscular, like just ripped. He was a CrossFitter, and he's just huge dude, like 6'2", just massive. And I just look at him, and I was like, hey, man, are you mad at your shirt? And he's like, what? What do you mean mad at my shirt? Why would you say that? And I said, because the buttons on your shirt are like literally just holding on for dear life. They're just so stretched out. It looks like you're punishing them for something that they did. And he just laughs. He goes, that's pretty funny. I'm like, thank you. And then he looks at everyone. He's like, why don't we just start a group? We're already talking to each other. This guy's funny. Let's just do this. Let's just have a group. And so we formed a new group. It was crazy how that all did. And we who wants to host? Oh, we'll host. Cool. Who wants to facilitate? We'll facilitate. Cool. And it was like, boom, set. And this became our home group for the next 2 years while we were in Atlanta. And the guy whose shirt was being punished for some reason became one of my closest friends. Today, as we continue our series and we talk about community, this is often how we get through our tough stretches of life, is the people around us. They're the ones that will share the grief with us, and they're the ones that will celebrate the joys as well, too. So we're going to look at 4 different components of a good community. And the first one is that your community needs good investors. Again, we're going to be in 1 Corinthians chapter 3. We're going to start in verse 5. It says, after all, who is Apollos? Who is Paul? We are only God's servants through whom you believe the good news. Each of us did the work the Lord gave us. Your good community needs good investors. Paul is pointing out that he and Apollos, which is another church planter, were just regular guys that God brought together to bring the news of Jesus to this church. And he's reminding them, he's saying, salvation is not me. I cannot save you. We're just the messengers. We're bringing the good news. It's vital. We've invested into you. We've planted this church. We did the work the Lord gave us, quote unquote. But then he asked them, who is leading you? Who guides you? Who invests into you and you into them? As a pastor, I've had the fortune to have many men share wisdom and invest into me. And as just as a believer, even when I wasn't working in the church world, for some reason, every boss that I had, even in the secular world, they were all believers. It was crazy, coincidence, right? But it wasn't. It was the Lord. He was investing into me, and He knew the type of people that I needed in my life. And almost every single one of them were believers. It was crazy. They would be like, "Oh, I went to church this week." I'm like, "Oh, what church you go to?" And it was awesome. But some of those men, and like Nathan, some of you guys have met him. He came to our church last year and he spoke, and he would show up. This is what he would do. He would show up at my house on Saturday morning, like, I don't know, 8:30 in the morning, and he would walk into my room, and he would have his two kids, and he had a 1-year-old son, and he had a 3-year-old daughter, and he would walk in with his two kids, walk over to my bed, throw them on top of me, and then say, "Good luck, I'm taking my wife out to breakfast." No warning, no heads up text, no phone call, was not on the calendar. He would literally just show up, drop his kids in my bed, and then leave. And I'm just like I don't even know if this is real, You're just kind of like, what? Oh, it's Saturday. Leave me alone, And I would wake up, and I was just, you do one of these because you're still trying to, and I can't see without my contacts anyway, so they're just a big blur of children anyways, and I'm just like, and I look at them, they're both smiling at me. They're like, "Hey, Uncle James." I'm like, "Hey, guys, I guess I'm watching you for a little bit, huh?" And they would just shrug their shoulders. Like, "What do you guys want to do?" "Okay. There you go. Cool. Here's this 24-year-old dude that he's just going to leave his children with." Which, by the way, if this puts ideas in your head, take it out of your head right now. Do not, please, show up to my house and throw your children at me. That just is weird, okay? But that's what he would do. And then he would come back after a few hours, and him and his wife would be like, "Oh, thank you for watching our children." I was like, "I didn't have a choice, but you're welcome." And then I would ask him. I remember one time I asked him, I don't know why I didn't ask him in that moment, but one time I asked him later, and I said, "Hey, why do you do that? Why do you just show up unannounced and leave your children and just literally throw them at me and then take off?" And he's like, "It may seem weird." I'm like, "Yeah, it's a little weird. But I only leave my kids with men that I trust. I do not, if there's any ounce of distrust in me, even if there's just any tickle of I'm not sure, I do not leave my children. But I trust you and Mike," which was my roommate, 100%. That if anything were to happen and I had to leave my kids with you for a week, I would not even worry. And I was like, "Okay." And he said, "I see value in you. I see value in our friendship. And as a result, I trust you with even my most precious commodities." I don't know if commodities is the right word, but you know what I'm saying, like the gift that God has given him. And I said, "Okay, I guess that's fair. Way to turn that around." But I was thinking about that, and I was thinking about how he saw enough value into me and trusting me that he was willing to do this. And as I was reflecting on this, I went to visit him earlier this year. Spoke at his church, and his kids are now in their 20s, mid-20s, and we had a great time. And afterwards, he and I talked on the phone like a week later, and he's like, "Hey, I wanted to tell you something that my kids said. My kids came to me after you guys left, and they just sat down in the living room while wife and I were just watching TV, and they said, 'Hey, Dad.'" I said, "Yeah." They said, "How do we find people in our life that will show up and be there for you the way that you have James and Alyssa? How do we find that?" He says, "We want that. We want people that will show up no matter what, that you trust with every aspect of your life. How do we do that?" And he said, "You start to invest, and it takes time." But I was thinking about that comment, and I shared that with my wife, and she's like, "Oh, because she's my little feeler." And I thought about the fact that community needs development. Community needs time. It means it needs investment. You can't expect to be best friends immediately just because you point at them and say, "We're best friends." That's not how it works. It takes time. The second point I want to make is that your good community has clear and defined expectations. Verse 6, I planted the seed in your hearts, and Apollos watered it, but it was God who made it grow. Whoa. It's not important who does the planting or who does the watering. What's important is that God makes the seed grow. So your community, your good community, is going to have clear and defined expectations. Here we see Paul outlining distinctive roles. I planted, Apollos watered. Is either of them more important than the other? I know it's very chicken and egg, right? Which is more important? No seed, if Paul never plants the seed, the watering is useless. But if Paul plants the seed and no one waters it, the seed planting effort is useless. Those two together are symbiotic. But in the next sentence, he says that doesn't matter. If I planted or Apollos watered, it doesn't matter. What is important is that God does what only he does. That's the most important. That's what he says. He says we just have to be available to what God is going to do. We all need clear expectations. If we allowed any and all things to happen all at once with absolute chaos, we would eventually break. Psychologically, we would lose our minds. If in your home you said that your 5-year-old was allowed to take the car out and run errands, don't do that. You are not going to be a happy camper. If your 35-year-old husband says, I'm going to go back to kindergarten because I just loved it so much, I just want to hang out with other 5- and 6-year-olds and just color all day. That's weird, unless your name's Billy Madison. Then it's funny. Those are things that there are boundaries. There's roles in your home. As you get older, you get to do older things, and you have responsibilities and all this other stuff. There's appropriate responsibilities, and then there's wasted responsibilities. But the reason that God has designed all of us to have different roles and responsibilities is to get the best versions of ourselves that we can be. And if we look at that in the church context, some of us are better fit for some roles than others. If you cannot sing or play an instrument, being up here on the worship team is probably not for you. You might be like, but what if God just blesses my vocals at the last second and I can sing like someone that sings great? I don't know. Mariah Carey? I don't know. Did I date myself? Celine Dion? Still dating myself. I don't know. Someone else. Someone young now. I don't know. But years ago, I had a woman come up to me and says, God told me, James, that I need to work with youth, with teenagers. And I said, all right, cool. That's awesome. Like, what? Yeah, that's great. So then I asked her some questions. I'm like, have you ever worked with youth? She's like, no. Okay. Do you have teen children? Do you have any experience with youth? No, not at all. In fact, I don't really like teenagers. Okay. Let me ask you, what did God say exactly? You know, because you want to hear. So what did God say? How did you get to the point where God says, go work with teenagers? And she goes, okay, let me tell you. I'm like, great. I was sitting in church. And I was, the message is going, and the pastor was saying we need to be more involved and we need to let God use our talents. And so I said, God, where do you want me? And as I was praying this prayer, there was a slide that popped up that said that you were doing a fundraiser for camp. So I thought, man, there it is. The Lord is revealing the sign. So I need to work with youth. It doesn't matter if I don't like it. I mean, Paul talks about a thorn in the side, and he, maybe that's the youth are my thorn in my side. I'm like, it's not how that works. I said, those junior high kids will break you in an hour. You will renounce your entire faith if this is not your calling. And so I didn't say that, but I was like, I thought that, but I didn't say that. And I just looked at her and I said, I don't think God is calling you to serve in youth. I love that you want to serve, but let me ask you, is there another area in the church that you're like, man, I would love to be a part of? And she's like, well, I really like little kids, like toddlers. And I said, well, now that's a start. So I walked her over to the children's pastor, and I said, hey, she's interested in serving with kids. Obviously, we got to go through background checks and all that fun stuff. I'll let you guys connect. And she ended up being one of her volunteers, and she would serve, and she loved what she did. She loved playing with toddlers, and that was her niche. But sometimes we need to find our role within the church. We need to find a place that needs us, and we need to find a place where we can help. One of the best pieces of advice that I got from at my last church in San Diego, there was a couple there. They were super volunteers. They served everywhere, and they said, we always want to be a part of a church where we are needed, like where they need help. We don't want to just be. We want to actively serve. And the reason we do is because we believe that Jesus actively served, so we want to model him. And I was like, man, that's a great way to put it. And that was just a good piece of advice. So find a place that you're needed and where you can help. Number 3, your good community looks for harmony with others. Verse 8, the one who plants and the one who waters work together with the same purpose. And both will be rewarded for their own hard work. Right there, harmony. He says we all have a role. We just established that in the last verse. But within those roles, there's going to be friction. There's going to be conflict. Why? Because our moods change. Because our energy level changes. Because life happens. Because some days we wake up and we're in a fantastic mood. Other days we wake up and we hate everyone. That's just the human nature of us. Life shifts. I had to say that very slowly and intentionally, so I didn't say the wrong word. Life shifts. Life happens. Good days, bad days, and because of that, friction is inevitable. Paul points out in this verse, there still needs to be a symbiotic partnership within your community. The word symbiotic means to work together. The word parasitic means that one draws benefit from the other. One of my closest friends is my college roommate, Mike, one of my absolute dear friends. The funny thing is our origin story didn't quite start off that way. We didn't really like each other when we first met. We met on a bus ride to new student orientation, and he sat right like catty corner, not straight across, but right there. And the dude is loud. Like he was just constantly screaming. He's Hawaiian, so he was always like, yeah, and just he had his ukulele. Like it was crazy. And I'm just like, dude, I'm tired, bro. You're just come on, chill. And he just had that personality. He just filled a room, very extroverted. That's his personality. I'm the one in the corner. I'm plotting the evil schemes. Like that's just, that's how we are. And so for a long time, he and I just coexisted because we had kind of the same friend circle. And so we coexisted. His roommate and my roommate were really good friends. His roommate and I were really good friends. He was good friends with my roommate, but I wasn't really, it's just like this weird love triangle. And we just had this friction between us because of that. Because I was very introverted, he's very extroverted. Everything he did annoyed me. Everything I did annoyed him. It's just kind of like that. And then, because the Lord is hilarious, he made us roommates. And it was because his roommate and my roommate wanted to get an apartment together. In order to do that, you had to have 4 people. And so they were like, let's just all 4 of us go. And they didn't ask. They just said, we're in. And the next thing you know, I'm like, we're in an apartment. Like, what just happened? So we're in this apartment. And, during this time, man, we had so much fun. I got to know Mike in a different way, and he was always down to try some of my evil schemes, some of them in disastrous, spectacular failures. But those are different stories for a different day. But we had a ton of fun, so much fun. But there was still an emotional disconnect. There was still, some kind of couldn't quite put a finger on it, but it was almost like, the Legos didn't quite snap in fully, It was just kind of teetering on the edge. And I knew that after college, because we weren't like super good friends, we were just going to drift off. He was going to go his way. I'll go my way. It is what it is. And in fact, that's what happened. We graduated. He moved away, went off to graduate school in Louisiana. I stayed in California. So basically completely lost touch for a couple years. And that's kind of what happened. And then he comes back into town after he finishes school, and we reconnect. He's like, hey, let's hang out. And we all hang out together. And he'd been going through some hard stuff with a breakup, and then his father died right after that. And so my father just passed a year before that. And so like there was just all of a sudden we started coming together. We're staying up late. We're talking. We're processing. I'm helping him, being, yes, I know, it sucks, but it's going to get better, I promise. And we're just going through that together, and all of a sudden, we went from just being roommates to being good friends. But harmony for us did not begin until we both decided to invest into that friendship. And the reason that we've stayed friends for so long is a combination of the investment, the understanding, and the forgiveness. We could have crumbled years ago. I have done things that wronged him. He has done things that wronged me. Friction, again, happens. But when you look for harmony, when you want to continue that connection, that means that you also look for resolution. I know we have this friction. What do we do? How do we stop it? And sometimes it's trial and error. And sometimes you figure it out right away, but it requires time and effort. And when you put in the work, you'll find that something else happens, which is my last point. A good community finds blessing in doing God's work. Verse 9, we are both God's workers, and you are God's field, and you are God's building. We find a blessing in doing God's work. He says working together is a blessing. Paul says it right here, right there in this verse, for all of us to learn. He says that he's no important than anyone else. What's important is that God's work is being done. In fact, if you read some of his other letters, he says that he's the least important. Then he points out that every person has an opportunity and ability to be a part of God's plan for his people. One of the cool things about Mike and I's relationship was as we developed after college and we started, we were roommates again, and we were inseparable. We did everything together. And what was awesome about that is we were the last two of our friends group. There was, probably 6 or 7 of us guys, and we were the last 2 to get married. So they were all getting married one by one, and we were roommates, and we're like, one day, we're not going to just be standing up there in the tuxedos. We're going to be the ones saying I do, And so we would encourage each other. And we stayed roommates for a long time, and we had a great dynamic. Again, he was the party person. He was the, he's just taking his shirt off and twirling it around. I'm like, dude, we're in church, stop, like stuff like that. And that was his personality, and he would invite people to the party that didn't exist. So then my personality is like, all right, let's throw a party. And so I would make the party happen, and I'm the one that made sure no one got arrested and, those kinds of things. But then we met a guy named Chris. And Chris was introduced to both of us from a mutual friend. It was one of Mike's friends. That was his friend, invited him. And so we befriended him, and we just started hanging out. And we're like, hey, you want to go to church? He's like, no, it's not really for me. I'm not a church guy. We're like, oh, it's cool. You want to go to this event? Oh, what is it? It's a men's breakfast. You men's just get together for breakfast? I'm like, yeah. Is it a church event? Yeah. But you got to eat, right? And so he would come to the things, all right, whatever. And so he started coming to these events, and he started coming to church, and he's like, this isn't so bad. Like, I can see why you guys go to this. You guys are all, pretty positive, and you kind of like each other, and, this whole God, Jesus thing seems to be pretty cool for you guys. Cool. And so we started inviting him more and more. And he goes more and more. Mike would bring the party. He would invite him, and then he would say no, and then I would come alongside of him, and I'd say, hey, what if you came to this? And he would come. And so then what ended up happening was it was at these events, at these parties that Mike invited him to, that Chris and I would sit down, and we would just wrestle together. Not literally physically, but spiritually. And we would ask questions. And he would say, why do you believe in Jesus? And I'd say, this is why I believe in Jesus. And I would share with him. I said, I had a real experience with him. He showed up and he tapped me on the shoulder and he says, come follow me. And he'd say, well, how's your life changed? And I said, because everything I look at now is from an eternal perspective. And we would just go through these questions together. We wrestled together. And eventually one night we're at church. He experiences God and he says, James, Jesus tapped me on the shoulder and said, come follow me. So I did. I raised my hand. And he became a believer, and it was the start of his journey. See, God will use your life and your talents to reach people if you let him. If you see it as God's blessing for you and those that you reach, God, he's gonna put you in position to do that. When you look at your community, is it a blessing? Do you have room to expand and reach people that need that same community in life? Because the reality is that we all need connection. We all need that set of people that walks with us, that shares joys, that shares grief. What if God's asking you to be the person that helps someone find Jesus because of your life? The band's going to come back up here, and we're going to do one more song. I know we're a few minutes over. But I'd like to close with just the idea that your story is exactly what someone might need to hear. The things that you go through, the things that you have come through the other side on, God can absolutely use that to reach someone else. God used that in me when my father died, and I came out about 1.5 years later, and Mike's dad died. And I got to walk with him and say, I know this is so hard. And then that led to a deeper friendship, and then that led to a 1-2 punch of evangelism. Like, you just never know what God's going to do. But in order to get to those positions, and in order to be used by God, you have to put yourself in position to say, God, use me. You've got to say, yes, God, I want to be what you want me to be. And it requires you to take that active step. One of those active steps, Alyssa came up here and shared is home groups. Like, we're going to launch home groups here at the end of this month. We'd love for you to be a part of one. Sign-ups are in the back. If you're a dude and you're like, I just want to hang out and eat wings with other guys, we're going to start that next week. Next Monday night, there's an opportunity. Like, there's places that you can serve. Like, there are so many ways that you can build community. But you're only going to do that if you're proactive. So my charge to you is, don't think about it. Pray about it. There's the scriptural answer, right? The spiritual answer. I'll pray about it. Don't pray about it. God doesn't need you to pray about community. He wants you in community. That's biblical everywhere. Instead, why don't you just say yes to God and say, God, okay, I will do this. I will join a small group. I will serve. I will go to Man Cave Monday, whatever it is. Say yes. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, I pray right now, God, as we dismiss, as we get ready to roll through our week, I just pray that you remind us that we are here for you, that we are here to do your work, whether we are the seed planter or the waterer or even the harvester. God, I pray that we are obedient to the task that you set in front of us. God, help us to find urgency in community. I pray that you can just use our story, Father, to reach more and more people for you. And I ask for this in Jesus' name. Amen.